Hi guys, I'm Bex,
And I'm Grace.
and we're the Packer Sisters.
Tune in each week as we process through everyday topics and personal experiences.
Alright guys, this week we are going to talk about a topic that is near and dear to both Grace and my hearts. We are talking about the LGBTQ community, and I apologize if that is not your preferred label, because I know some people prefer queer, some people prefer LGBT plus. So we're doing our best over here, and
Yeah, we are, I would consider this part two of almost a mini series on social justice topics that Bex and I are hoping to cover in the coming weeks, and also in our last episode where we had Peter cover race in America with us. There's just a lot of things going on in our world today that we kind of want to talk about, both together and with you all. And so thanks for being a part of these conversations. And we hope that these get you to be thinking about
Mhm.
also what you believe, what you think about these things.
Yeah, so we're just gonna have some more conversation today and
Mhm.
really get into some deep topics that have to do around this community.
Mhm.
But first, you guys are probably wondering why this topic out of like all the social justice topics we could bring up.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, this has been kind of a current event over the last probably 5 or so years, especially once the Supreme Court made gay marriage legal across the United States. But also, I mean, we've seen a lot of violence against the queer community
Yeah.
recently, and also there's been a movement of Black queer leaders during this time as well. And so it is definitely something that Bex and I are also working to strive to learn more about, to understand, to empathize, to also learn how to support this group of people, because we have many people in our own spheres that identify as LGBTQ, and we love them dearly. And so it's really important for us, and has been important for us, to really process through these things, our beliefs over time, and also our attitudes and how we handle those relationships.
So one thing that I haven't necessarily talked a lot about with people, because I haven't really discovered this about myself until more recently in my life with a lot of self-reflection, is that I identify as bisexual. And yes, I am married to a man. So first glance, you're probably like, "What? You're heterosexual. What's up with that?" And I mean, both Grace and I are married to men. And
Mhm.
the thing is, like, yeah, we're gonna have a different perspective on all this because of that.
Mhm.
But I do know what it's like to have like a crush on someone that's, the same gender as me, or that's the opposite gender as me. But also, this may be the first time my family's hearing about this, or at least some of them. And I just want them to know that this doesn't change who I am as a person. And honestly, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it shouldn't be, because I'm still Bex, and that's just me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I just wanted to say that too, because I want to show that Grace and I are big supporters of the community. And Grace has been such a big support to me through all this as well. Like, she's just been a really good listener and someone that I can run thoughts by in all of this. So, I think we're ready to bring up these topics today.
Thanks, Bex. And I want you to know, like, I just really admire you, and you know that I adore you. And I just want you to know that I'm always here, and that I think you're very brave and very bold, and you stick to your beliefs, and I just love who you are. So thank
Shucks.
you for sharing these things, and thank you for being willing to talk about it, because I know it can be close to home or sensitive sometimes. And so I think this is really cool that you're open to having these conversations, to identify kind of our perspectives. And so, yes, I am in a heterosexual marriage, and I am straight. I identify as straight, which I understand also carries its own kind of privilege, just like we understand being white has its own sorts of benefits. Being straight also has some of its own sorts of social benefits. And so a big part of my journey right now too is learning how to use those privileges and benefits to benefit others, including the LGBTQ community.
Yeah. And like I
Mm-hmm.
said, Grace is a really good advocate for this community as well. So, yeah, just wanted to put that out there as well so they know we're
Just
on
kind of
your
share where we're
side.
at.
Like, yeah.
Well, we're learning. We're learning how to be, and we're learning how to be better all the time.
Yeah, there's always
So,
more learning to do, and I think that's how it always is. So let's all
yeah.
learn together today.
Yeah. So, today we kind of have some discussion questions just to kind of talk about Bex and my experience. Um, so I guess we can just hop into it if you'd like. Go for it.
Grace, when was the first time you met someone who identified as LGBTQ, or what was your first exposure to this community? Like in the media or just in real life even?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, because I think as I'm thinking back, I was definitely exposed to this in middle school,
Mhm.
but I'm trying to think, because there's definitely been more stuff happening in the media lately to portray LGBTQ relationships and individuals, and I think they really didn't start doing that until I was in high school. So
Yeah.
in middle school, I started participating in like some extracurricular activities. I was in choir. I joined like a drama club or like an after school club that did like improv. And I made some good friends there. And at the time, I think they identified as bisexual, which later they identified as lesbian years down the road, into our friendship. And so I think for me, my first exposure was really with the people that I was building relationships with, and that we had things in common. We did activities together. We played games together. We hung out. And so for me, it was meeting those people and having an opportunity to actually get to know somebody, who is honestly just like me. Um, but, I mean, there's some differences.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Were they, I know this is kind of a different question, but were they
Mhm.
pretty quiet about their um
Oh, about
like their
sexuality.
yeah, like did they go around telling people or did they just like tell you because they trusted you?
I want to say they weren't ever trying to hide it.
Right.
I don't think that they were very closeted about it, the friend that
Mm.
I had in particular that I'm thinking about. And there were a few people actually during that time,
Wow, yeah.
who identified as queer, that were kind of, I had made friends with at the time. But no, I don't think any of them were super closeted. But I also do think that there were a few of them that, like you, maybe didn't really understand what they
Yeah.
were going through and the experience that they were having.
Yeah.
When I think a lot of people on the outside could kind of see, and the people who had that knowledge could kind of identify that and talk with them about that and give it a name, you know?
Yeah, I understand. I think what surprises me is the fact that they were so open just because during that time period, like
Mm-hmm.
when things were finally, well, like it's always been around, like the whole LGBTQ community has for
Mm-hmm.
forever, I think, but it's
Mm-hmm.
been treated very differently depending on the time period. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like when we were growing up, it was very much still taboo.
Yeah, I feel like it
So,
became more normalized probably in the 2010s.
yeah, so
It felt
I,
more normal.
yes. And so I guess I have a lot of just like appreciation for those people being so bold because that's really great. I think that they already owned that about
Mm-hmm.
themselves and they just walked proudly and weren't afraid to tell people.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people who are scared to come out, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. I just remember it also being like so strange to me for the first time to ever see like two girls holding hands or two girls kissing or two guys holding hands and two guys kissing like and I say that because I mean, we grew up in a very like
Yeah,
Christian household where,
conservative.
you know, well, it's not just the household, it was the fact that we were in kind of more of a conservative Christian community where the
Yeah.
beliefs were that to be gay was a sin. And I'm
Uh-huh.
sure for those of you who have an understanding of Christianity, like you know that that is kind of it's a point of contention within the church.
Yes.
And many churches have actually split off because of that belief. So
Yeah.
there are churches to this day that will actually allow uh, queer pastors. They will host marriages for people in that community.
Yeah.
But other churches refuse to do that. And so
It,
that has been a
yeah.
huge point of contention.
Yeah.
So in the I guess the ideology that kind of our family fit under at the time was it was a sin, and that whole phrase of love love the sinner, hate the sin. I
Oh
know
my
that's something that you
gosh.
had mentioned. Yeah, you have some
Triggered.
thoughts on that. I feel like, don't you?
Well, still, I want to kind of go back to what you first said just about sin in general. Like, the fact that we're told it's a sin, but like everyone sins, but
Mm-hmm.
somehow they wire it into like us. I don't know if this is just me, but it's like they wire it into you to make it feel like being gay is like the worst sin there is. Even though
Mm-hmm.
like they're saying you're just as bad as they are. Like, I'm sorry if that triggered anyone. Just talking about like sin and being gay, but I just don't understand why it's so double-sided sometimes.
I think that's a big part of being human is that we are really good at creating division because
Yes.
we like to think that we're right. So
Yeah,
I think that's a big part of it.
because the thing is, like, people always reference scripture and they're like, oh, there's that one reference that's like, oh, like being gay is bad, you know. But there are other points in the Bible where they talk
Mhm.
about gay, like in a not bad sense, you know. And so it's like, okay, like I don't really know what to take out of that at that point.
I was going to say, Becca, do you want to answer the question too? When was the first time you met somebody or were exposed to LGBTQ?
Besides myself, no.
Yeah, Becca, you didn't know at the
Yeah, no,
time. That
I
was a
know.
more recent
I was trying to kid. Um,
trying to kid. It
uh,
was an attempt.
so I guess like my first exposure was very similar to kind of what Grace is going off, like born into a community that's very much like not for LGBTQ and the lifestyle. But I remember specifically being in like 6th grade or something, and Disney Channel had their first, I think it was gay couple, like 2
Mm-hmm.
guys, on one of
Mm-hmm.
their shows. And I remember it being this huge deal that we couldn't watch it because there were gay people in it. And I remember because I was so young, I was like, oh, like that's disgusting, that's taboo. Um, and I don't really remember talking a ton about LGBTQ like in our home either. Like that wasn't a
Mm-mm.
conversation that we really had.
Mm-mm.
And not really in church either. They just said, "Oh, the gay people," or "Oh, those LGBTQ," or worse, they'd call them the homosexual, like the homos or whatever. And
Yeah.
that's not very polite wording.
No, I would also say, like, I want to mention that I think those behaviors and attitudes are very cultural. So
Yeah.
I want to say, like, especially on behalf of our parents, that it was a lot of those things that were practiced in our household were based on the cultural values and expectations of the churches that we were
Yeah.
in the communities that we were a part of, because I know that our whole family has changed
Yeah.
over time, and our attitudes on this topic have changed over time. It's unfortunate that this was part of our childhood, but I think that we're not alone in that, and that there are a lot of kids who shared this experience. But yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that our parents aren't
Yeah.
necessarily like the most homophobic people.
No, no. And the thing
They're
is
not.
too that we're talking about years ago when we're saying when we
Yeah.
were first exposed, like that was a long time ago now that I think about it. But
Yeah.
nowadays there are a lot of people and a lot of even Christians in general that have opened up more to this idea. But yeah, it's definitely continuing to change as time goes.
Yeah. No, that's true. So next question, Becca, I'm going to ask you. What are some lies or myths that you have believed about the LGBTQ community? And then
Oh
also we
boy.
should try and identify the truth. Like
Yeah.
what is the reality?
So okay, definitely some lies like that the church had told me specifically, like growing up as a child and middle schooler, me being that little goody two shoes Christian that just listened to whatever the church told me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they told me like if you're gay, you're gonna like live that terrible lifestyle where you're gonna have sex all the time with other gay people and like you're gonna get STDs because that's what you get for sinning, and that you're
Mm-hmm.
going to like hate God, and that you like choose to be gay. And I just want to say like the truth of the matter is that if you're gay, you literally just prefer a certain gender over another. Like you're not gonna go crazy doing sexual activities. Not really. I mean, there's obviously people out there of any gender that would do that if they needed some help. Um, but like normal people aren't gonna go crazy. They're gonna
Mm-mm.
use protection just like everyone else, and STDs are really anyone can get one.
Mm-hmm.
And they just want
Oh,
love, like everyone
yeah.
else.
Yes, I agree. And I was going to add on top of it because I think something that we hear most common, which is super misinformed, is that you hear extremely homophobic people usually say to that the gay community especially for gay men or bisexual men, that they obviously have to have HIV or AIDS,
Yes.
and that is absolutely not true.
No.
That definitely comes from being predisposed, or also having unprotected sex, and also coming from people who are carrying that. And so that is
Yeah.
absolutely a misinformed comment
Yeah. Honestly, just
that people use.
go get tested for
Mhm.
STDs before your sexual activity and use protection. Like I feel like that's anybody can use that. So there's some wisdom for all of you listening.
There you go. There you go.
But also kind of off of what I was saying, some of the lies were too, is like if they are a Christian and come out, it doesn't mean that they hate God. It means they feel
Mm,
comfortable enough with their own identity to tell others about their discovery. It's not being rebellious. It's not being like, wow, I hate God, so I'm gonna come out as gay. It's like, hey, I can still be a Christian if I want
mm-hmm.
to and come out as gay. And if this community doesn't appreciate me, I can go to a different one,
Yeah,
you
there
know?
you go.
And I know this one could be a whole nother topic, Grace.
Hmm.
The whole idea of choosing to be gay.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
because
Mm-hmm.
I've studied this in a class I took in college for like a semester. I think it was a semester.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I met a lot of people that identified on the spectrum, you know, and we had some really good conversations, and we talked about this for many class periods about whether it's a choice or not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, I've been wrong about this because I used to think it was a choice like years ago, but I've started to learn that it's not necessarily a choice. Like, it can be somewhat based on how you're raised sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I've also met people that have gay parents that were born straight. Like, you don't have to be gay if your parents are gay. You don't have to be straight if your parents are straight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm trying to be careful with my wording here because this is important to me too. Just like learning
Yeah.
all this. It can be a preference you discover over time and something you don't just like come out of the womb and you're like, hey guys, like I'm gay or I'm lesbian or whatever. Like you're not gonna be a baby walking around like that. You usually have to figure this out for yourself as you get older. But some people just need more time than others to realize it. But I do think it's a part of your genetics in a way, like something that's just inside of you that is either awakened or not awakened by like
Mm-hmm.
your path. I don't know.
Yeah, well, part of it is you do learn more over time. You're exposed to more over time. Um, and you get to know yourself better over time. And so I think there's these things that have always been there, and you get to understand them better as
Yeah.
you grow up. And so I
Yeah.
think that's a big part of it. And it's really cool too, because sometimes you see kids who are probably like 10 or 11 or even
Yeah.
younger who are seeing this in themselves and identify
Uh-huh.
this way. And so I think the more informed we are as a society, the earlier on it can be, like kids can be identifying it because they've been raised with this information on how to understand themselves. And I think that's the best tool we can provide is education and information
Yeah.
um, to
Because
people.
kids need to know that if they're feeling a certain way, something's like not wrong with them. Because
Yeah,
that's how I felt for
yeah. I
years.
was gonna say, how would you feel if like you knew
Oh,
back when you were like in elementary or middle school that you
man.
were bi?
Yeah, because
How much easier would that have made your experience?
I honestly am not sure I would have come out earlier because of how I grew up,
Mm-hmm.
just being afraid of how the community around me would have reacted. So I think
Right.
this is like the best time for me too, because I'm actually really like comfortable about my sexuality now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I'll be watching TV with my husband and I won't find any of the guys attractive, but I'll see this one female character. I'm like, man, she's hot. Like, and he doesn't care because he thinks the same.
Appreciate the human body.
Yes. And it's not that I'm gonna go out and like, I don't know, like go out and like kiss women or like sleep with women or anything. Because you can have sexual preferences like I do and be more into men than you are women, but you're still bisexual.
Well, and here's the thing too, is you mentioned earlier that there is a spectrum.
Yes.
Um, and so you can be on either side or in between somewhere. And so I think that's kind of what you're speaking to.
Yeah, so okay, I know this is going to be a very much forward thinking idea here. Um, and you don't have to agree with me. I know that there are lots of people who would disagree, and that's totally fine. But I think that everyone is technically on the spectrum somewhere. Like, not like necessarily bisexual, gay, or lesbian, but like I could look at my sister and be like, she's pretty feminine, but I do see some masculinity in her. So, like, I'd say you're like 90% feminine and maybe 10% masculine. You know what I mean? And I'd look
Mhm.
at myself and be like, I'm maybe 60, 70% feminine and like 30 to 40% masculine,
Yeah.
you know? But
Yeah.
you can identify as really whatever you want. So, like, Grace can be straight if she wants to be straight. I can be bi. Anyone can be whatever they feel like is right for them.
Yes, but I think also what you're speaking to, though, is you're also speaking to gender and gender expression because
Yes.
femininity and masculinity are part of the gender expression. But
Yes.
I am, my sexual preference is men, which
Right.
therefore makes me straight, but
Yes.
I identify and present as female. And I go
Exactly.
by she, her. Um,
Oh, and this brings us to a really great point to go over some definitions of gender.
hmm,
Because you're
let's
going
do
into
it.
the whole like pronoun idea, so
Dig into it, Becca.
yeah,
Dig into it.
do you want to start, Grace? Just start with the definition of gay.
Oh, sure. I guess so. Becca did a little research, and so these are kind of some of the most general definitions that we could get. Just for those of you who may not be certain as to the differences between these terms that are used all the time. Um, to be gay is basically to be characterized by your sexual attraction to people of the same sex. Um,
Yeah.
and people essentially use this for men and for women oftentimes.
Yeah.
Um, but you will hear the term lesbian being used more often to identify women
Yeah.
who are sexually or romantically attracted to other women.
Yeah, so like there are some female couples that prefer to be called gay or lesbian, so you can, if you're good friends with somebody, maybe ask them, but you don't need to like go up and be like, "Are you lesbian?" That'd probably
Yeah.
be kind of rude. But yeah, just know gay does most of the time refer to men
Mhm.
couples, and then lesbian is usually for female couples, but you can also say gay depending on the couple.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that's a big part of these kinds of terms and identities is like it's really important to check in with the people in your life that do fit within this community to say like,
yes,
hey, how do you identify? Because I want to make sure that like
exactly.
I'm being true to who you are and I'm
Yeah,
respecting you, you know?
yeah. Oh, and
So
then I'll do this next one because it's
mhm.
bisexuality. And that means you're characterized by sexual or romantic attraction to people of one's same sex and of the opposite sex. Also, it can be characterized by sexual or romantic attraction to people of one's own gender identity and of another's gender identity. So that I love how they did that, because it's saying sex is, if you guys don't know, sex is referring to the biological. So like if you were born with a a penis or not, that would be your sex. But gender is a socially constructed thing. So like if someone is transgender, which we're about to talk about, that's their
You can
gender
just talk
identity.
about it, Becca. Just talk about it. You're
Yeah,
already
so
there.
so yeah, like transgender is a person whose gender identity differs from the sex they were born with. So like let's say for example, like I biologically, like my body is a female's body, but if I ever was like, wow, I want to be a man, or like I feel like I've always been a man and I think that I will like show myself as that from now on. That would mean if someone asked me what my pronoun was, I would no longer be she, her, but I'd want to go by he, him, and I might take is it steroids or hormone
Oh,
therapy?
yeah, like a hormone.
Sometimes transgender, like the transgender community, there are people within it that do want to go through that to kind of present themselves more like the
Yeah.
other gender.
You
But
can take testosterone as a
yeah.
female who's wanting to present male,
Oh, there
or
you
you can
go.
take estrogen as
Yeah.
a male who's wanting to
Yeah.
present more female.
I don't know why I thought steroids. This just shows you how little I know about it.
Oh gosh.
I've met
We're still learning.
several. Yeah, I've met several transgender people, and I even worked with somebody who was, but I've never been so close to someone to be able to ask them the deep questions that I would love to ask, but I've never felt like I was close enough to a person to ask. But yeah, like if any of you have experience, always put something in the comment section because we would love to discuss stuff with you guys. But yeah, continuing on. So another gender identity is, or a sexual orientation, is asexual, or that, well, that can mean not having sexual feelings towards others or not experiencing sexual desire or attraction sometimes. Though I've heard of asexual people wanting romantic partners, but not necessarily sexual partners. So there is a distinction there, like someone might want uh somebody to like be with them and have romantic dinners or whatever and hang out, but they are just not interested in sex. So and then the last one is pansexual, which means not solely homosexual or heterosexual, but you can be attracted to all kinds of people no matter what sexual orientation they are. So like you're not really, you don't really have a label, I believe is what that means. Like you're pansexual, but you're not like masculine or feminine necessarily. You're just in there somewhere. And you can be attracted to anybody, whether it's transgender, gay, lesbian, bisexual. You're just attracted to anybody that you're attracted to. So, and there's
It's so
tons of
interesting.
others.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's so interesting. And it's, I know for me, like, I'm still getting to understand all the terminology and all the different labels that can be used. So it's always good to have these conversations and to kind of try and dig in more. And I think along with that, now kind of knowing these terms, I'm curious, Becca, I'll at least ask you, why do you feel this is important for cisgender individuals to know and to understand? And when I say cisgender, it means
Like
you,
heterosexual people.
well, it's not just heterosexual, it's you you are sexually you're biologically one way, so for example, myself, I consider myself cisgender. I am biologically female and I present female,
Yeah.
which is the definition of cisgender, that I present
Yeah, yeah.
based on my sex. And
Okay.
so I'm curious then, Bex, why you feel like it's important for cisgender individuals to know and understand this kind of stuff about the LGBTQ community.
Oh man, I mean, honestly, it's to break all those stereotypes that are in our
Mm-hmm.
heads. Because I used
Yeah.
to identify as cisgender straight, until I realized that I wasn't. Um, and I'm sure that can happen to anyone anytime in their life, but like, don't be scared if that happens to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's not a scary experience. But I just want people to know that, you know, there's people out there that are just like you. And even if they love different people than you do, it doesn't mean that you need to hate them or attack
Mm-hmm.
them or anything, because the LGBTQ community goes through so much
Yeah.
violence that
Yeah.
sadly people don't realize. So don't give them more hate than they already have, please.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people in this community that suffer from a lot of mental health issues and suicidality. And so
Yes.
it's really important to be aware of this and to acknowledge that, mental health is a serious issue for a lot of people, and it's something that we need to identify and be able to help support one another through it.
And
Yeah.
on top of you talking about struggling with mental illness, uh, which can happen a lot in the LGBTQ community because of all the
Hmm.
violence afflicted on them.
And then
There's
shame and
some
guilt too.
exactly the shame, the guilt, the violence, emotional, physical, spiritual pain, like any of that. Um, there are a lot of struggles that they go
Hmm.
through, like we mentioned, violence, people being attacked in the street for holding hands with maybe the same gender as them. uh there's conversion therapy, which, man, this could be a whole nother episode on its own, but we're just gonna quickly talk about this. Just conversion therapy is not a good thing. It causes a lot more harm than it does good, and a lot of Christians and like Christian parents especially push their kids to go if they come out. um, please don't. Because after therapy, individuals are 8 times more likely to commit suicide, and they struggle with personal confidence for the rest of their lives, and they're basically stripped of their personality, and that's not what you want. Like, if you really love your kid, just please don't try to change them.
I know this is going to sound super silly, but the image that comes into my head is from the show Phineas and Ferb. And I think about
Yes.
when they are, I don't know if it's like a camp or something,
It's like
or
a
they're just
boot
like,
camp or something
and
weird.
it's essentially like going to prison where they
Yes.
are just like totally like all of their personality, all of their creativity,
Mhm.
all of their
They're
confidence and identity is
brainwashed.
just like sucked out of them.
Yep.
And then they are essentially these just like little robots who have no emotion and no sense of understanding of the world anymore, because they're just there to do what they're told. um
And
and I know it's so silly and it's a kids show, but like that's kind
it's
of
a
the
good
imagery that I
example.
get.
I like that example. I also want to say on the flip side that if you do identify as LGBTQ and you really don't want to be for some reason, like you really want to be straight, um, just you do what you think you need. You know, like if you want conversion therapy, be careful.
Needs to be on your own
Yeah,
choice,
you need to
though, for
decide for
sure.
yourself, but be careful and try not to lose all of yourself. But yeah, there's a lot of other struggles people go through, like employment is hard. Healthcare can be hard. Like
When you
even to
say
get it.
hard, though, do you mean just they experience discrimination?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay.
They experience
Okay.
discrimination in getting hired, getting fired, healthcare. Like sometimes the healthcare people won't give them exactly what they need and deny
Mm-hmm.
them their own rights to certain medications.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and there's tons of other things,
Yeah, I
honestly.
mean, like the whole Supreme Court case too, didn't that have to do with being denied services of some kind of like getting like a cake or something? Like, I mean, there have been lots of cases like that where it's been LGBTQ people have been denied a common
Yes,
service.
the cake.
And um, it makes no sense, but also it does because historically, like,
uh,
we have not been the most open and loving
right.
and accepting people, and that goes for race and it goes for gender,
Oh yeah. There's so many.
and disabilities, and yeah, it's just like
Uh,
there's so much. So I guess before we wrap up today, kind of like Peter and I did on our last episode, one of the things that we want to do before leaving you all is offer some resources so you can go look up some information
mhm.
and do your own research. And these are actually pieces that we have used or we have had some sort of exposure to ourselves. So we aren't just recommending you things that we've never read or looked at or watched before. These are things that we've personally used and have helped us improve our understanding of the
Yeah.
LGBTQ community.
I wanted to start off by saying I took a class in college called Gender Theory and another class about women in the Bible, because we did go to a Christian university, so it's only
Mm-hmm.
natural. Um, but a lot of books on feminism support LGBTQ. So
Mm-hmm.
if you are reading any feminist literature, you're more likely to come across that kind of stuff. So, read feminist books if you're in that kind of class or you're just interested, or go out and find those books on LGBTQ if you want.
Mm-hmm.
And there is some movies or TV shows we've seen that portray healthy LGBTQ relationships, at least in our opinion. um,
Not, I wouldn't say that Shira is healthy,
really?
but
I mean,
well,
I
because
think She-Ra
they kind of go back and
portrays.
forth.
Oh, I mean, like, there are some
Oh,
background characters in the show She-Ra that portray some very healthy relationships, like Natalia and Spinnerella, for example. Like, they're a married
gotcha.
couple, and they're so
There you go.
adorable.
Okay, because I was like the main
Um,
characters. That's
so
really a dysfunctional.
yeah, Shira and Katra kind of go back and forth. Are they adorable together? Yes, but was it super healthy throughout the whole show? Probably not. Um,
Okay.
some good movies are Hearts Beat Loud. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
really adorable coming of age film. Highly
Oh, oh
recommend.
yes, with Nick
And then,
Offerman. So
yes, yes, Nick Offerman is in it with a beard, I think. Right.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, and Love, Simon. That was a
Love
great
Simon.
movie. Kind of a coming of age high school like
Yeah.
romancy, but
And
it was a really sweet movie.
yeah, that's on my watch list. I want to see it. Um,
Yeah, it was really good.
and also Moonlight. I think it won some
Mm.
awards, and I know it's about also a black guy coming to terms with his sexuality,
Mm.
which kind of crosses over with last week's podcast and this week's podcast. So that one might
Right.
be even better to watch, honestly. And I'm sad to say I haven't watched it, and that's also on my watch list right now on
It's on my
Netflix.
watch list.
Yes, I need to watch it.
Yeah, there you go. For me, I think I've done a lot more reading on the topic, and I haven't done a lot when I say a lot. But I highly recommend reading anything by Glennon Melton Doyle. She wrote the book Love Warrior. and also the new book Untamed. And basically, she's just a really incredible woman who went through a lot as a kid and a young adult, and essentially went from being in a heterosexual marriage to going through a divorce. And now she is married to a woman who's a super famous soccer player. And so I think those books cover a lot of her journey, her experience. They're very raw and authentic. And so
Ooh,
they're really cool to read. I
that
highly
sounds
recommend.
good. I think
Mm-hmm.
I should read that.
Yeah, no,
Um,
they're really good.
and if you're looking for like a comic artist, I know this is kind of different. I recommend Brutally Honest Comics. I follow them on Instagram, and it's this female couple, and they're totally adorable. It's so real, and they talk about some of the things they do in everyday life, and it just makes it more like relatable, I think, to people who don't know what the lifestyle looks like, and it's really just normal. It's like
Mhm.
like I think of Zach and me when I see this woman who makes the comics and her wife, and I'm just like, that's us. It's just really cute. I recommend it. Oh, and we wanted to leave you guys with a reflection question.
Mm.
um, if you're having a hard time kind of relating to our topic today, I want to challenge you to replace any time we used the words homosexual, LGBTQ, gay, lesbian, anything, with the name of a loved one of yours. Like, for example, if I'm looking at some of the stuff we said, like people being discriminated against. For example, like I could say the LGBTQ community is discriminated against and they have a lot of violence towards them. I could say Grace is discriminated against and has a lot of violence towards her. And that makes it become a lot more personal. So, like, how would you guys see this now? Like, how would this change the meaning for you of LGBTQ? And would you do something differently now?
That's really good. Well, if any of you have any recommendations on future topics, or if you have any recommended resources on this topic, we would love to hear them.
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to drop them in comments.
Yeah.
Um,
Or if you have a
and
story about it.
or you have your own experience or story that you would love to share, we would love to have you do that with us. And like I said, we are not perfect in our understanding of this by any means,
Yeah.
but we do recognize that it's important for us to probably risk looking stupid sometimes to have these kinds of conversations, because no, we are
Honestly.
not the most informed on everything, but we do know that this matters to us because it
Yeah.
matters to the people around us, and it affects the people around us. And since we have intimate relationships with others, this is a really big deal.
Yeah.
So,
And
um,
next week, you'll get to listen to us reading our diaries.
I don't think that'll happen, but okay.
Are you sure? You don't want to read your childhood angst, Grace?
We'll see. We'll see. Who knows? But anyways, thanks for joining us. And like I said, if you have any thoughts or questions
Yeah, please
or
share.
resources, please share. We would love to share with you.
Sounds good. Thanks for
We'll see
listening,
you next
guys.
time.
Bye.